One. Love Talk Radio.
Okay, yippee-ki-yay. This is it. It's another day. It's January of the year 2021. We're sitting here in the United States of America wondering what in the what is going on. However, today's the 18th of January. On the 20th, we're supposed to have an inauguration. And I'm sitting here. This is the influencers. We're not feeling particularly influential, but gosh darn it, in this episode, we're going to regain our mojo and get it. I'm your host, Dr. Deb Carlin. I'm here with my host, Mr. Brian Lunt. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Yeah, we're hanging in there. Here's the thing. We're here for Partners in Excellence Media. I call it the influencers. Mondays are all about Brian Lunt and the business club, the St. Louis Business Club, which is amazing. It's an amazing place to go. It's an amazing place, whether you're in person or you're virtual, because what Brian has done, where I've got the influencers here, he's got the masters over there, and he pulls these people together who he believes in, who he sees have got talent, who could lead others who need that brand of talent and get them moving along. Because if you're going to be a small business owner, you need a lot of resources. For one thing, it gets lonely out there. For two, I know we all feel very capable, but we can't do every single thing. So maybe you need a mate. Maybe you need a bookkeeper. Maybe you need human resources. Maybe you need a contract. Maybe you need some leadership pushing. Maybe you need something really spiritual. Maybe you need the advice of somebody like Brian Lunt, who is an entrepreneur, who is a small business, who is a banker. You can't, it's sort of like being a Marine. You can never stop being a banker. Right?
Not the truth.
Yeah, it really is true. And with your expertise, you've got perspective at 30,000 feet, and then you actually come down from that and you sit and you talk to people right on the ground. And you love being on the ground, boots on the ground, right?
Absolutely.
So, for all of our audience who are sitting out there going, I don't know what to do. What about the inauguration? Are we still going to be a capitalist country? Are we still going to be America? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball here, but what we do have is we have spirit, we have faith, we have a core belief that this is the United States of America, and that's not changing ever. It just isn't. And it doesn't matter what people are saying anywhere. I want you to listen to both of the Democrats and the extreme left of Democrats, the right and the extreme right of the Republicans. I don't hear one single peep out of anybody saying, no, it's not going to be the United States of America. What I do hear people saying is, I'd like this to change and this to change and this to change and this to change. Well, you got to get a lot of cooperation if things are going to change. And you have people who disagree. So here's what we have to do. We're all small business. Brian and I are both small business. We're both entrepreneurs. We have a lifelong dedication to it. And guess what? We're sitting here before the show starts going, ah, what's going to happen? And then guess what? You know what? We're going to still be breathing. We're going to still have our mind. We've got our health and we've got our faith, which means that we have a perspective that everything always works out. It just does. It just always works out. So what do we have to do? We have to practice patience. Oh, brother. I mean, there was a time in my life I could almost, pitch my cookies here and that. Patience. What are you kidding me? Temperance and pace. So if you're moving really fast right now, I want you to really consider the pace at which you're moving. Because if you're moving at a clip, you're missing an awful lot of the scenery and opportunities. There are people in your life, both business and social, who care about you, and they're suffering too. Have a conversation, figure out right now who your friends are, and allow them to infiltrate your cock-a-doodle-doo thinking. And I'm telling you, Brian Lunt is here because he is an influencer. And over at the St. Louis Business Club, listen, this show that we do twice a week is part of St. Louis Business Club offering. You're all dialing in, listening, and there are ideas and support and words of wisdom and ideas and tactics. You need to hear them. And then you need to approach Brian and say, you know what? I like it that you are out there and you and your co-host, even though she talks too much sometimes, are out there talking about the things that are really important to me. And I really need to be able to understand how the St. Louis Business Club can work for me virtually and in person during this rugged time, both for my business and socially. So tell them, how does that work?
Well, it's interesting because we're in a bit of a transitionary period. I think, as every good entrepreneur and business owner, reacting to the conditions and the environment that they're all being put through, is that, I've spent several months, if not years, pooling people together in person. And I think we're all dealing with this reaction uh, and the fear that many people are engaging in, that they aren't comfortable coming together in person. And so we've maneuvered a lot of our things online instead of having in-person masterminds like we like to do. Those have turned to a in-person virtual hybrid, which we invested in technology to do so. And more recently, I think we've just been having them all virtual, because that seems to be the easiest way to get the most amount of people together. And so, virtual meetings are a good way to connect when we can't come together. And our efforts for me have been more geared towards virtual offerings and a virtual structure than what I had gone with prior to. So just like any good business, I'm adjusting to the conditions and seeing how we can adapt and develop something new. So the most recent version of what we're building is more of an e-commerce site for service offerings. So we're working with some local tech experts and some strategic partners to build out kind of an Etsy for services.
And
so,
Etsy?
Yeah. So an eBay for services, kind of an online shopping mall for service providers. And so what we're looking at doing is developing short form video, 1 to 2 minute commercials, for lack of a better understanding, about what somebody offers with a shoppable video function within it. And our goal is to pool as many St. Louis-based businesses together as we can, so that we can create a St. Louis-based portal that many people will want to go to and see what's provided. So, if you want to get a financial planner, you don't have to go out and interview or meet with 15 people to see who you want. You can watch 15 videos, and then from that determine who it is that you want to work with. And so our goal is to, the original goal of the business club was to create in-person interactions where we work with one another, we talk to each other, we determine what the capabilities of somebody is by being in person with them, and maybe transition that model more as a virtual offering. So so that's kind of where things stand right now, is just a little bit of adaptation.
So one of the things that I'm going to tell you is that I don't think you credit yourself with is the reality that it's really personable.
Mm-hmm.
When people are walking in there, like, it's kind of creepy to walk into a new place. I mean, it's fun. It's not really creepy. Well, it is creepy. I always feel a little creepy. Like, well, what's it like there? What are the people going to be like? Are people going to be nice to me? Are they going to be interesting? Are there any good matches for me in there for my business and for somebody that I might want to sit down and have a cup of tea with or have a conversation with? And the fact of the matter is, I think that you really facilitate that, and not just in person, Brian, but online.
Sure.
I've been to your stuff online and people are pretty cozy.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges I have is confirming the amount of relationship building it takes in order to manage a network of resources.
Yeah, right.
Because there is, I think, a false understanding in the marketplace that you can just jump on Facebook, or you can jump on an email and just say, hey, I need a plumber, or hey, I need a lawyer, or whatever it is. And you're going to get 15 recommendations back from people you may or may not know. And then, you have to vet these people yourself. And then 15 months later, you realize, wow, that was a really poor choice. That did not fit my needs at all.
Right.
What I have done is I've spent a minimum of 5 years, if not 20 years, creating relationships in the St. Louis ecosystem and vetting people myself. So I use myself as a guinea pig. I use myself as an information gatherer. I trial relationships and partnerships on purpose so that I can be a good, trusted resource in order to make partnerships and recommendations. And so it does take time. It does take energy. And I have honed my capability as a vetting expert, whatever you want to call it. And so when I make a recommendation, or I say that the two of you should work together,
Yeah.
it's not because it just sounds good. It's because I've thought it through and I've got experience with two parties, and I think that it will lead to positive outcomes. And the good news is most of the time it does.
Yeah, that's cool. So that's a new title. We have a new category of entrepreneurship now called vetting expert. I like that. And so I think that we have a logo that's a bridge,
Yeah.
And that's awesome, because quite frankly, Partners in Excellence is like that too.
Yeah.
I've collected a lot of people over the decades, and I try to have people that can fill every conceivable need. So it doesn't matter what it is. So you and I are really the go-to person when people are in trouble of some sort, or they just have a need, which might be a creative need, not a I'm in trouble need, and they really need reliability.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we got to be really careful with who we refer.
Absolutely. And that's, I often tell people that my relationships mean a lot to me. My currency in a lot of regards is relationships. And I try not to give them away lightly,
Yeah.
because when a relationship, there's a way to manage a relationship that I think is appropriate. When you invite somebody into a relationship that you have fostered over the years,
Mhm.
and you recommend somebody or you vouch for somebody to come in to that relationship, you're putting your name on the line for that person. And when they abuse that, or they take it further than they should, or they cut you out of the relationship very quickly,
Oh my God.
that does not bode well for the way that I operate. I have mastered something that I call the three-way, which
Okay.
is when I introduce somebody, I really want to be there to tell each party what my experience with them has been.
Yeah.
And then I am really there almost as a chaperone of the relationship to see how it might go.
Absolutely.
And I watch, and many times I get to sit back and enjoy what I assumed would happen, which would be some very good positive outcome. And other times I have to step in and say, well, this is what I was thinking could be a good avenue to take, or this is what I was seeing in knowing both of you. And in cases that it works, that's great. In cases that it doesn't, then they have me to rely on to continue that conversation and see what I saw. And if they don't see it, then that's okay. It just it's not the right fit at that time. But the majority of the time, when I'm putting people together strategically, it does have a positive outcome.
Yeah, I find that too. When I do a referral for somebody, I want to stay in the middle and guide it, shepherd it. And there have been a couple of times when I've had one party or the other go, well, you don't need to be here.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually I do. I mean, I don't necessarily need to be sitting in on every one of your meetings, but I want both of you to be accountable, because I put this thing together, and here's
Yep.
the reasons why. And by the way, it was very clear why. And so I want to make sure that things go well. So a lot of times for me, it's like a medical case, and
Mhm.
I'm doing medical advocacy, and I've been guiding the patient and guiding the care provider, and I want to make sure that everything is really clear, because when people aren't feeling good and they need help, things can get really jumbled up. Their communication isn't exquisite. If you're relying on the records of others, maybe they're helpful. Maybe I know where they're full of malarkey. And so I've learned a couple of really hard lessons about who not to ever do business with again.
Yeah.
People who I've known and loved and trusted. And
Yeah.
then, it's like, wow, you really failed me on this. I got to do something else with this person. And when people stick with me and say, well, I don't know what happened there, but yeah, what's our next move? I think, well, hallelujah. So it's only a 50% loss.
Sure.
But yeah, relationships really are precious,
Mhm.
and we have to take super good care of them. And I think, Brian, I think right now people need the St. Louis Business Club more than ever, because we are sitting, if you're in St. Louis, in the St. Louis area at all, and you can actually drive over to your club, I would advise people to get a hold of you and do that and enjoy the personality of the place and see it and get comfortable and get to know you and some of the people in there. And if they're not wanting to come out, a lot of people are starting to get socially phobic. And
Yeah.
so it's like, well, I know I could go out, but I'm more comfortable here. Yeah, well, maybe you're a little afraid. And that's happening to all of us. I mean, I'm experiencing that. I am making a lot of choices to stay burrowed in, and then I feel kind of weird about that. But I also know it's a temporary circumstance
Mhm.
until things really start to normalize again. But if people are hesitant, the virtual presence, the virtual experience that you can have, if you're listening to us on Blog Talk Radio, if you go over to YouTube and look at the influencers, Partners in Excellence Media, you're gonna, I mean, come on, who doesn't feel comfortable sitting in here with us? And with Brian, the way that he does it, I'm in there sometimes. It's kind of like you have a big room that's really beautiful, and you've got the cameras adjusted nicely, and the sound, and you get to see other people, and you facilitate people talking, and what about you, and what about you. So nobody's in there to be on the spot, and nobody's in there to be not attended to.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there is a skill to running a meeting.
Yes.
I think when you look at most corporate meetings, they generally have a leader, and I'm putting quotation marks up, or someone who's in charge
Absolutely.
managing a meeting, and a lot of times that person speaks a majority of the time,
Right.
and then there's maybe 30 to 50% of the others that feel comfortable speaking, or protected in their speaking, and then the majority of, or the remainder of the people kind of stay quiet. And so I have a few different things I say, but I always like to say I irritate people into action. So I'm constantly calling on others. I'm constantly keeping people a part of the conversation. I do a lot of roundtable conversations where everybody is required to speak, and give us insights either on what they're doing so that we can know more about how they operate, giving us advice so we can understand what their mind can offer us,
Yeah.
and then what they need out of their business. Because I often want people to leave with value. I always want anybody who gives us their time, whether they're there as a member or there as a guest,
Yeah.
they are all giving us their time, and I want to make sure that their time is invested in something that they believe they're getting a good return on their time.
And that's tough.
Hmm.
That's a tall order.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you walk into a structure like that, you have to understand yourself well enough to know that if you're not leaving with business answers direct to you,
Mhm.
there are ideas being bounced around in there. Your expertise ought to give you a feeling of satisfaction. And if you allow the other people in the room to penetrate your thinking, you might just find that as you percolate a bit, you really got benefit from that experience,
Mhm.
you know? And I make sure that I do that with every single encounter I go into.
Yeah.
Something's going on in there. And I'm, right?
Yeah. What I've found has been really irritating is a strong word. Amusing is a very good word for it. I have, my company is called Seed Level because I seed a lot of things. I seed a lot of ideas. I seed a lot of relationships. Well, I will see two or three people that I think will benefit from knowing one another, and I strategically place them in meetings together so that they can make a connection uh, and then create a relationship, whether that's a personal or professional relationship. And I know of people all over the St. Louis area who met because of me. And I'm amused by them doing things on social media and talking about their projects they have going on, but also sometimes the lack of understanding that that was done very proactively. And to say, you guys are building this really cool business together. I'm very proud of you and happy that that happened. But there are times that I'm like, that may not have happened had we not put these situations, seeded some of these relationships. So,
So let me ask you a question. What have you ever had fun with that and wrote a comment and said, I am so glad that I introduced the two of you because I envisioned you'd get here.
I do that sometimes.
I think it's really healthy if you do.
It is, and sometimes it's thank you, and sometimes it's we would have met anyways or something along those lines.
No way.
Every now and then, yeah.
That's now see, nobody should do that.
Yeah, it's but I think there's also there are folks that I work with that totally understand what I'm doing and how I do it and very much appreciate it. And they come back constantly because they know I've created value and good relationships and accelerated their growth in many aspects. And then there's others that are kind of oblivious to it. And I'm not saying that they do it on purpose, that they say, I can do all this on my own and you didn't help me. It's just an ignorance of it. I think that it was done proactively and it was done for somebody's benefit, and if it does help either party or both, that's a good outcome, regardless of whether you get the credit for it. I just enjoy getting acknowledged. So I mean, that's one of my I don't know if you call it a character flaw or one of my special things, but I enjoy when somebody says, hey, you're the one that introduced us.
Yeah, right. No, I don't think that that's a character flaw. I think that that's the human condition. If you don't want credit for the things that you do, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
There's something very wrong.
I don't always need credit. I enjoy it because I see good positive things being created, but it's fun to be recognized.
Okay, so let's change from the word of credit to appreciation.
Yeah, that's always a good thing.
Because we all want to be appreciated all the time. And as a matter of fact, what we know about gratitude and appreciation is it changes your brain chemistry, whether you're creating it or you're receiving it. Because when you receive it, you start to create it. Like if someone says to me, I really appreciate you. I've got a lot of gratitude in your direction. I think to myself, oh, I have some in yours too. So it's really contagious. And I love that. And what better way is there for us in here as the influencers to use our influence than to share what our dreams are, what our visions are, what our realities are, what the tangibilities of it are. You're just sharing all of that. And what we're trying to do, what we're intentional about doing is inspiring people to, as they say at E4E, experts for entrepreneurs, don't fly solo.
Right.
It's fun every now and again to go out and do it all on your own. But look what happened to Charles Lindbergh, man. I mean, he was exhausted. And there's not a need to do that beyond a certain point. I mean, we all want to know what our capacity and our capability is. But when we have the social presence of others, social psychology is very clear. We really do like to be around people. We just like to be around people that we can anticipate and be predictive about it. Volatility is the enemy. If I don't know what I'm going to find with you when I encounter you, it's going to drive me to distraction because that volatility is too much. I got to recalibrate everything. If you're a stranger, every time I meet you, right?
Yeah.
So we're teaching people that there are safe spaces, so the St. Louis Business Club is a safe space.
Right.
You come in, you can get to know people. Nobody's going to ding you. And there are people who have been through all kinds of experiences and they're there to try to help themselves. And if you walk in, you might have something that they need. So it's a mutual share. So in the midst of all of this, all of that is good for business because any business that we do, whether we're computer programmers or we have a restaurant, we need people and we need the social side of things because if we go in and we're just cut and dry, it's all about business, like what was that television show with the police in Los Angeles from the 60s? I mean, it was just Dragnet, just the
Oh.
facts, ma'am, just the facts, and we laugh about that because he came off as not at all personable, but really and truly, he was very personable.
Yeah.
We're never just about the facts. There's always that human element in there. And so if you want to really do good business, who do we want to do business with? People that we like, people that we know, people that we trust. So are there times right now when there are people at the club, or is it pretty sporadic because of the way of the world right now? And this week doesn't count. I mean, this week does not count.
It's just weird. There's no getting around it because we're working with factors that we haven't faced before.
Right.
Worldwide pandemic is new.
Yeah.
That's new. That's new circumstances. The information anomalies about what to do about it. Who's the expert? Who's the guide? I think what's really interesting to me is that we're starving for leadership right now, and direction, and I think that's confusing everybody.
Yeah.
And me specifically is that I've been spending more time at my home office because people are reluctant to come in person, and then I'm wondering, do we need a physical office? As I'm imagining many people are wondering, and so that's one of the reasons that we're putting a lot of emphasis on the online operations is because just like any good business, we have to adapt to the demands of the customer, and that's where the majority of our members right now are maintaining. They're staying at home because there's so much uncertainty in the marketplace, and it's interesting. I often talk about how my history with banking and financial planning and other things, being an entrepreneur, is all about risk and just understanding how to manage that risk. And this is a risk that just is very unsettling because there's no real clear path because we have so-called experts at odds. And so
there's no template for this.
No. And so just like any good entrepreneur, we make it up as we go, and we kind of rely on one another to put our heads together and figure out what works the best. And the solution has been a hybrid. That's where I've fallen. I like to play in the middle. I like to play Switzerland. I like to be the negotiator and the facilitator and the person that keeps a cool head. And so we've developed technology that allows us to have people in person and people at home, and we still get to have hopefully a seamless experience where we can all be together. And so that's been the development, that's been the adaptation, but it's still not a final solution, because I personally, as the kind of leader of the club, I don't want to do online interactions forever.
Yeah.
I prefer
not forever. Right.
What's that?
Not forever.
Right. I mean, it's what we're doing right now. And so we have the capability to offer amenities to our members and camaraderie and community and advice and education. And ultimately we'll hope to, back that up and with a wonderful facility and all the amenities that come along with that. So it's, it's kind of going through the motions like everybody else.
In terms of leadership, I think one of the things that we have an opportunity to do this year is to allow ourselves to be our best leader based on our faith and our spirituality. And then to allow every one of our acquaintances to talk, to see if there's anything that they think or do or feel that we would like to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Because that really is all leadership is do you want to follow that? And I think that um we're all thrown off. 2021, people were hoopla, excited, and I didn't want to rain on anybody's parade, as we say, but I did not see it as exciting. I didn't see it as a new opportunity. I saw it as another day, and we have a calendar, but there was not going to be a magical thing that was going to happen that was going to make it all different. And everybody's going to make New Year's resolutions. There's literally a world of uncertainty for us out here, and in order for us to be able to survive this, there's key words that I'd like to put into everybody's head. I I believe that they are about resilience and about hardiness. And hardiness is a word that Dr. Susan Kobasa came up with when she was studying really resilience,
Mm-hmm.
because she was looking at how do people really get through tough times? What is it that happens? And she was studying people who survived concentration camps during World War II. If
Yep.
you came out of Dachau or if you came out of Auschwitz, how in the world did you do that? Because that's magnificent.
Yeah.
So we ask those questions, and we have the capacity for a tremendous insight when we look at what is it that people do. And there's one consistent theme: you don't let the outside come all the way in.
Mm-hmm.
You have got your firm personality, and say it out loud if you need to. I say it out loud all the time. It will all work out. It always does. Now, other costs, yeah, it's pretty expensive. It's not what we're choosing, but what we do have the right to choose, what we do have the freedom to choose, is what we do inside of our mind, what we
Yeah.
do with our body, how we think and feel. That's ours. And, I'm really grateful that my mother was a woman who taught me from early on, don't ever let anyone's will be stronger than yours,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the core of you. So, if you're watching the news and you're getting lost in it, I don't care what channel you're listening to. I don't care what your political position is. I really don't. I can't. I can't afford to, because none of them are really stable.
Yeah.
That,
Well,
you know?
I'll tell you what's interesting to me is that what 2020 taught me, it, years ago, I enjoyed watching politics. I shouldn't say enjoyed, that's a strong word. I watched a lot of politics
Yeah,
and I saw what was going on in the national news
right.
all over the world. And then it started getting me wound up. And so I looked, and what got me to turn it off was I started looking at headlines 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and the same alarmist kind of behavior that was trying to sell advertising, right?
Right.
And so I finally came to the terms that they're going to continue to scream Chicken Little like the world is coming to an end because they want everybody to look at them so they can have their business model sell advertising, right? Or sell their message, whatever that ends up being. So
Forever.
2020 really had this push towards online, towards a larger community, towards, put your eyeballs on the media and spend money with, online, really well thought out online platforms. So Facebook and Google and Amazon and all these giant companies got really wealthy, and our local businesses kind of suffered, which hurt me because I'm trying to build an ecosystem of small businesses and locally focused small businesses. And
Yeah.
so as we've had to develop this focus on things that are outside of our control, which is really the politics and the business that's bigger and much farther away from ourselves and our locality, it's been unsettling for me. My response has always been, when I shut off the news, when I shut off what was going on a world stage, I started just meeting with people in person, and I started creating those relationships one-on-one. And I don't care what people's politics are. I don't care what, the major extreme opinions they are, because I get to know them with relationship, and we know and love one another at the core human level, and all that other stuff it's just noise. So when 2020 focused us back onto the same types of things that bothered me in the past, world news, things going on in cities that are far away from me, and people that are far away from me, and business that, cashes their checks in different cities, it took that away from my personal focus and what I can see, what I can, what my five senses tell me around me. And so the pivot has been to give into it a little bit by getting onto Zoom calls and having virtual meetings, and maybe building an online platform, but still offering that local flavor to it, so that I can support the local economy the best way that I know how, given the circumstances that are given to me. And so the most recent pivot is to try and get as much value as I possibly can, but still provide that local flavor, so that when things normalize, if they normalize, we can get back to these in-person interactions and supporting the people that are our neighbors. And that's really what the St. Louis Business Club is all about. I'm going to do everything in my power to try and support the local economies at the most efficient way that's given to me, with the parameters that are given to me. And so my antidote to all the unsettling things that are going on the world stage is to hyper focus as best I can on my family and my neighbors and my friends and the people that I can go and see, taste and smell and hug,
Right.
and worry about them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where my head's at.
Boy, hugs are like so awesome these days. I've always been a hugger, but man, oh man, I had I had business associates in for a few days, and I'm telling you what, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Hug in the morning, in the evening, in the middle of the day. I mean, it was just like, wow, this is energizing all over again. I'll tell you, one of the things that was running through my mind as you were talking about local business in St. Louis, I was thinking, ooh, at the business club, you should have Fitz's root beer, our
Yep.
local University City, but soft drink distillery.
Yeah.
Hodak's chicken.
Yep.
Ted Drew's concretes. I mean,
Yeah.
all of a sudden I start clicking in my mind, and really there's a lot of things that each community is really known for. And
Yeah.
in St. Louis, we've got all these marvelous brands and family names, and even Schnooks and Straubs and Deerbergs. We're the only city that I can think of, until other places like Time and Fresh and Whole Foods have come in. We're the only city that I can think of that I've really known well. We're the only marketplaces that we had for grocerying were 3 family names.
Mm-hmm.
And the families are really there. The families are still really doing it. And so there's one of the things I love about St. Louis is that quintessential big town, small city, really.
Absolutely.
And it's really easy to navigate around it geographically, and I think socially.
Yeah, St. Louis is a unique town. I'm the biggest homer that there is when it comes to loving St. Louis, but it is an interesting ecosystem to navigate.
Yeah.
And it's always been a little different, and there's things to love about it, and there's things that are challenging about it.
Absolutely.
And so my special flavor of helping people navigate the network is to try and get people to come together and realize that you're better when you operate from a spirit of abundance and working together, and more eyeballs on multiple businesses as opposed to just your own is a good solution to trying to get people, to know what you're doing. And my fear has always been that people silo themselves off into, this is the way I want to do it, this is how I believe it should be done. And I have a level of that to myself, but part of my recipe is that I'm not entirely correct. And I want to rely on a community of experts and a community of people to say, we all believe that this is a good path forward and we are all going to benefit by working together. And I think when you can see the people that it's benefiting within your community, within your club, within your neighborhood, that feels a lot better to me than, trying to help somebody that's, thousands of miles away. And not saying that people shouldn't do that, but it's just the flavor that I like to promote.
Well, it goes along with the philosophy I've always had, and that is take care of your own first.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like if your family's hungry, make sure that they're eating first. If your neighborhood is a wreck, clean it up first before you go out and
Yep.
expand your territory. So I understand that perfectly. And I think the beauty, even of places like New York, is that we've got neighborhoods in New York. We've had neighborhoods in New York.
Yeah.
And the vendors all really knew each other, like the butcher and the grocer and all these different people were working in harmony with one another. And I think that's the beauty of what we still have in St. Louis. My belief, my vision, my faith is that it's not only coming back, it's coming back better. We'll be happier, we'll be cleaner, we'll be.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a big appetite for it. So I think, when people demand certain things, it finds a way. And so I think as long as the demand stays strong for community and for relationship, I think it will happen. What I am hopeful that the false community of social media is diminished, because I think there's a lot of bad things that come out of not being in person and next to one another. I think there's a lot of gossip. There's a lot of, bad sentiment when you're not physically in the energy of the other person. I think there's some, keyboard warriors that get out there and say things they would never say to their fellow human or their neighbor. And so, I think we need to break some of those manufactured walls down and get people up in each other's faces so that they're close enough to hug one another.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's part of what I want to accomplish. And I hope, I do have hope that it'll happen.
So right now you're at your home office.
I am, yeah.
And what is your next event, Brian?
We don't have any open to the public events right now. Most of it's just educational based or weekly masterminds or themed masterminds that we have for our members. So I mean, our next big meeting is probably our weekly Wednesday meeting that we have.
And so how can people get a hold of you so that they can talk to you and say, hey?
Yeah, the best is emailing me at brianlunt@stlouisbusinessclub.com or going to our website and filling out a contact form. People can call me, they can text me. What's funny about me is I don't like talking on the phone. And that is one of my character flaws. So I always ask people to text me or email me, because I do better on those things, or even Zoom calls or in person. I think there's so much lost on the phone when it comes to body language and and tone. So
but now
I'm a fan of it.
I'm really good on the phone. I love the phone. I've always loved the phone, but now I want to see everybody. So I'm like, people say, well, let's jump on a call. And I'm like, can we jump on a Zoom?
Exactly.
I just want to see you.
It's a FaceTime.
I got to get dressed. No, I don't care how you show up.
Yeah. Just come as you are.
Yeah. Throw on a robe.
I agree.
Well, folks, we're going to make it, we're going to call it a day. We're going to make it an episode and chock full. And listen, we'll be back on Thursday. Take care of yourselves this week. From Dr. Deb Carlin and Mr. Brian Lunt, this is peace out, friends. Stick with me here. Bye-bye.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Ta.